Well, welcome to the Legacy Project. Lisa,
Thanks.
we're talking to Lisa, say the last name.
Lisa Piantanida.
Piantanida. Multiple
Like an Italian pasta.
It is.
You hold it up.
Piantanida.
Yeah.
We're excited to have you a part of this. The Legacy Project really focuses on the things that have influenced and shaped you and defined your life, and also the legacy that you would like to leave behind. Not only for your children, but beyond all the boats and houses you're going to leave them, what are the values and the principles that you've learned that you would like to pass on to the next generation or to those that you work with or around? So we're glad to have you here. Our audience loves these stories, and we've had a very diverse group of people participating. We not only talk to the rich and famous, we talk to the rich and famous and the everyday people. My most notorious podcast was The Woman Who Cut My Hair for 25 years. And to get her background and the things that have shaped and influenced her and the legacy that she's left. So this is what I call a rank and file podcast. And I'm so glad you joined us. Lisa, you and I have known each other for what, 25 years at least?
A long time. Yeah.
Lisa worked with me at the National Crime Prevention Council and in Washington, D.C., where I was Chief Operating Officer. And what was your official title?
Public Affairs, Director of Public Affairs for the agency.
Affairs, which helped to manage the second most popular public service campaign in the history of public service advertising, McGruff, Take a Bite Out of Crime. And so we've had a long-term relationship. It's been great fun. Lisa, where are you from?
I grew up in Marin County, California, which is just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. It's a pretty nice place to grow up.
Yeah. So, and did you move to Utah at some point?
No, my parents chose to move to Utah when I was in college. So I never officially had an address in Utah, but I've always had a lot of family and a lot of roots there. We vacation there and we're big skiers, but I went from California and I got in my car, this will date me, with a giant paper map right after college. And I had a highlighter and I knew I wanted to go to Washington, D.C. I was really engaged in the political scene and the communications of politics. And so a friend and I got in my Jetta, my 1992 Jetta, and drove across the country with our giant map with $1,000 in my bank account. And I got to Washington, D.C. and spent more than 20 years there. And then met my husband, and we decided after having 2 kids, we wanted to move west. And so now I've landed in Colorado.
Wow. Great journey. And bold and brave.
It didn't seem so daring at the time, but now when you tell people that you literally didn't have a phone, you didn't have GPS, you just got in the car and started driving, I think there's something to be said for that adventure.
Yeah.
And teaching the generations now to be a little more adventurous and a little more self-sufficient and a little more people engaging, because that's what saved us in all those towns we went into. Mm-hmm. We would engage with people, and that's how we learned the restaurants, and we engaged with people, and that's how we learned where to stay that night. It's quite an adventure.
Yeah. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have one brother who's 2 years older than me, but he did everything much earlier than me. So I think he feels a lot older than me. He's got 2 grandkids and another one on the way. And I've got a 9-year-old at home. So we're a little far apart for being just 2 years apart, but our life journeys have been much different timing.
So in your journey, in your life, who are some of the major influences that help shape and define you? Who have motivated you, inspired you?
First and foremost would be God and Christ, and the way that Christ lived on this earth. But people today, or people that I've interacted with, I would have to say, obviously, my parents. And then two people beyond that. One would be my best girlfriend's grandfather. He was he lived in my town and he was there for all my major life moments. He was one of the most calming influences in my life. And he always seemed to make you feel like you were the only person in the room. If he was in a giant party, he could focus so intently on you that you felt like you were everything that he was talking to. He never glanced away, he never lost focus, and he showed me so much love. His name was Newell Stevenson. And then my softball coach is the other huge influence in my life. I played softball for 9 years, went on to state championships, played with a lot of the same players throughout that time. And this one particular man was involved in that career for a long period of time and then became my sole coach in high school. And his name was Gary Gates. The interesting part about Gary is he would say you can't beat somebody into greatness. You have to build them. And I thought that was such an incredible point because I had coaches that would have us run until we threw up, or we would have lost a game and by those number of points you would multiply by 10 and that's how much earlier we had to be at practice on a Saturday, or all these things that would tear us down. And the interesting part about Gary is he was always building. And ultimately, we named one of our sons Gates after Gary to honor his legacy in my life, that he was a builder. And amazingly, his wife, Emily Gates, she's, well, I'll get back to Gary in a second, but she was also in my life as a music teacher. And I found it so powerful that two forces for good were always building children. They were always involved in the high school, whether it was in sports or was in the music program. And they built a lot of greatness. Emily had multiple students and continues to have multiple students who have gone on to be on Broadway. She built greatness, and Gary built greatness in all the athletes he touched, and they never tore down. It was a great lesson for me. Gary passed away my senior year in high school. And I think that was part of his legacy to me too, because he was diagnosed with brain cancer and it was very quick. Less than 2 months, I want to say closer to 6 weeks from the diagnosis. And it was a powerful legacy to me about how you also exit the world. He was younger, he was in his 50s. And that could have been a very powerful time for me to be sad. And his wife and he took that opportunity, knowing they impacted a lot of youth. They had his funeral on the softball field. Wow. And they had the entire service done from home plate and everybody filled the field. We stood on the field. And the legacy that image has left with me was hope and greatness. And at the end of the ceremony, instead of, this sorrowful song or something as we all departed, everybody was given a colorful balloon. It was back when you could do that. And we were allowed to let go of these helium balloons and they ask you to think of a thought or a memory with Gary and then send it up to the sky. And so my last image of his funeral is this gorgeous, bright colored sky with thousands of balloons, and the power that left on all of us youth, that this was not a life lost. It was a life given for goodness. Look at all the goodness that he did. So it was pretty amazing.
Lisa, I want to follow up with this concept of build. Recently, particularly in a conversation with a client and a project that he's working on, it's called Living by Design. And he's heavily influenced by Eastern philosophy. He's an 8th degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. And so he's studied Japanese philosophy, Buddhism, etc. But what has struck me in reviewing his material corresponds with some language which you just used, that all too often we go through life letting things happen and or responding or reacting. my background is in history and theology. Um, and one scholar, Yaroslav Pelikan, a theologian out of Yale University, says that doctrine and belief is that which we believe in response or reaction to external or internal pressure. And the law is the same way. You just don't create law. Law is a reaction or a response to something that's going on. And what my friend Dennis Estes is proposing or suggesting is that we build. We must be architects of our future and of our life, and that be proactive in constructing or building our future as opposed to reacting or responding. Respond to that.
Well, in life, you can be in the driver's seat or the passenger seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't always control the other drivers around you. You can control yours. So there will still be things that happen to you and around you. But if you put yourself in that building capacity, that driver, as opposed to the reactor, I think you have so much more potential for impact. And I always say to my kids, what's the one thing you can control in every situation? And they say how you react. And so I live in Colorado, and the first snow always makes me laugh because the snow comes and there's two camps. The people that are like, oh, it snowed. It's terrible. It snowed, right? And then the camp that's like, yeah, it snowed. It's amazing. The snow didn't change. The snow is the exact same. So the life situations are often the exact same. But if you put yourself in the driver's seat to be the builder, then you can choose that reaction. So as opposed to being the victim or acted upon, I think that's a great way to approach life, is to be that builder, because the materials can change. But if you're the one who feels like you're in control, then you can make greatness out of just about any situation. You're in control. If you take the mindset that you are being acted upon, then you're out of control. And that seems pretty hard to make something good out of, unless good things are always being poured your way. But you can decide to make it good because you're in control. And I think the people who are great leaders walk into a room and they think they're in control, and they manage the room like they are in control. And maybe part of it is actuality, but I think they create their own environment of I am in control. And then people in the room look to them because they're in control.
You have three children?
Mm-hmm.
What are their ages?
16, 12, and 9. 2 boys, and then the 9-year-old girl.
2 boys and a 9-year-old girl. So, what is it you want to teach them? What have you learned of your legacy that you think is important for them to know and understand?
We have a saying in our house, and it is, you've been given 2 hands, one to help yourself and the other to help others. And that, I hope, is my legacy. I hope that they realize that they have been given much and they are expected to give much. And one of my favorite stories in the Bible is the woman who comes in. There's a rich man, and he gives half of what he has, and he feels very generous, and you think, wow, that's a lot. He gives so much. But then here comes the widow, and she gives the widow's mite, everything that she has. And it's a far lower amount in dollars, but it's far greater in what she's actually sacrificing. And I think that is such a poignant lesson for all of us, that it's not the quantity in regards to the dollars that we should be giving, but it's give all that you can. And hopefully that is the legacy I'm leaving my kids, the gift of service to others, because there's no greater joy you can find individually if you want to be selfish. And it is that giving gives you. And I think that is the whole purpose of Christ. He came on this earth to show us how to serve. And he did so without judgment. And he did so without status. He just served whoever needed it. If somebody touched his robe, he served. Like if it was a Sunday, he still served. All these different, or the Sabbath in that case. And so he just served, and he didn't do so with any pretense. And I hope that's my legacy to my kids.
What influenced you to go into communications and the area where you've developed expertise? You are a founder, the leader of Bumper Sticker Consulting, and you've got this amazing TikTok and social media campaign called Midlife, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But what influenced you to go that direction, given the values that you've inherited?
I love a good story. And
Hmm.
I think everyone has a good story to tell. And what I learned really early is that I was better at telling stories than a lot of people. And I thought, gosh, if I use my skills, I can help other people tell their stories. And if you can take your talents and build somebody else's talents in that process, it's kind of a fun gift. I love to go in and find a mess. Somebody, whether that's a big corporate mess or whether that's just at maybe a congregation or a church level or a community level, school level, where it's a mess because they don't know how to explain what they need to tell their audience. I love going in there and I love listening and hearing what the story is and then helping them shape that into a bumper sticker, shape it into a much more simple phrase where they can repeat it, they can explain it, their audience can understand it. Sometimes the information is really important. It might be about air quality, and you've got scientists who are telling the story. And as much as I love a good scientist, they typically are not your best cocktail party chatters, right? And
Exactly.
so if you can hear a good scientist's content and then turn it into everyday language, common dinner table language,
Hmm.
now the public understands the work of these amazing scientists. They feel protected, their air quality, they understand that their air quality has improved. But if you can't get it past the science jargon, the public doesn't understand that they're feeling safer. If there's a flood and the water quality's gotten poor and we're explaining it in nanograms, that's hard. If you're explaining it and it's drinkable, it's not drinkable. This is how you can make it drinkable. And taking whatever that story or that message is and making it digestible to the audience is something I just love to do.
That's great. And you've made a career out of it, which
I
is
have
which is great. To,
fun.
uh, you love a great story. Where did you learn to be a storyteller?
I thought everybody had that skill. When I was a kid, you and I have this similarity. You're a great storyteller. And I thought everybody had the ability to link a message to a story, to an experience, and to figure out how to share the punchline in a reverse form so that it engaged people. And you quickly realize everybody has very different skills. I am certainly not good in a science lab. So probably a scientist thinks everybody has the ability to understand what's under a microscope. I do not. But I do have the ability to tell a story. And I found early on that as I would go to talk, whether I was very young in kindergarten and I would see people lean in and inquire, and it's a craft. And so you just start to develop it better and better. And I love watching and listening to people who are very good storytellers and see why I got engaged and then try and hone my craft even more. I do think there's something fun to having a great storyteller at every party or every dinner table, because part of it is telling the story, but this other part is engaging the audience, engaging and then handing off that story for the next person to be able to be included in the conversation. And that's you mentioned Midlifers. It's a social media channel that we started, and the fun of that has been engaging complete strangers all over the world in how our midlife journey has gone. So it's been a fun way to take my craft of public affairs and public relations and then turn it into something personal and grow the audience in a fun way.
I started listening to it early on in the TikTok version of it, and was intrigued by it, and thought, where is this going? And how long can this go? And it's been going, and it's phenomenal.
Well, Midlifers is a social media channel you can find on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. We have about just over 500,000 followers right now. We've been on the journey for 22 months, not quite 2 years. My neighbor, Suzette, and I got into lots of shenanigans and have for several years, and thought one day we should film this. And then we started thinking, well, what's the point? What would be the point of filming this? And I put on my PR hat and I said, you got to define the audience. You can never tell a message unless you have a good audience, a clearly defined audience. And we realized most everything we did somehow engaged in the idea of us being middle age. We're two women in our 50s. We have very different politics. We have very different, well, not very different, but we have different politics, different religions. She had kids early, I had kids later. So there's not a lot of symmetry in our lives in some regards. And yet here we are traveling this journey of midlife. And we both don't like to be called middle age. So we decided to call ourselves Midlifers. It seemed a little more trendy than senior citizens. And we certainly aren't hipsters. So it stuck us right in the middle. And we decided to celebrate aging through laughter. Both of us love to laugh. And we thought, well, let's just talk about our lives. And what we found is there's a lot of fitness, fashion, and food in our category, in our age category. People show you how to look younger. People show you what you should eat. People show you what clothes you should wear. But they don't just talk about life. And part of midlife is funny. There's parts that are sad, but there's also a lot of humor. Finding out that your knee skin, for example, is now drooping. One day you just wake up and your knees don't look the same. I don't know when that happened, but I do know it's not attractive. I do know I don't want it. And what can I do about it? I can either get upset. I can try 1,000 creams. I can, tape up my knee skin. I don't know. You can do just about anything. Or I can call my neighbor and I can cut a video on it and make 10,000 people laugh today. And we thought, let's do that instead. So we got on this journey, and it has been an incredible joy. And it has been so fun. Nothing is off limits to people say, where do you come up with your topics? And I said, I wake up in the morning and I have a topic because something creaks, or I recently had knee surgery for the first time. I noticed my eyelid is drooping. I found out I can't hear as well. Like whatever it is, there's a million things that are happening in the aging process, but there's also so much joy. So we decided to focus on the joy, and it has been an extremely fun ride.
They're hilarious. And I really encourage the audience to look this up. The, you don't hold back. You are just. I think you did one on bras, and Colleen and I roared at the way you guys approach that topic in midlife. So
well, it was funny because we obviously work with sponsors now too to start. We're not rolling in. We're not becoming your rich and famous guests yet. Yeah. How about that?
Okay,
we're still the average guest,
and coming.
Yeah, we're up and coming. But we do have sponsors, and one of them was a bra company, and they wanted us to do, and we liked the product, and we both looked at each other and thought, we've seen how the young 20-year-olds feature the bras on TikTok and on Instagram. We are not doing that. And then we were like, but people want to see the product. So how would you show the product? And we decided to cut in and do a blurred out screen of us wearing them, because obviously nobody wants to see a middle-aged woman standing there in her bra. We thought that's not going to sell their product, but it would add some humor, which then was a hook, right? And then people said, you have to put it on. And so we put it on our heads, because why not? Right? Why else would, you could still see the product. We could talk about it. And that's kind of what we thought is, we could try and be 20 again, but who is that? You ask about legacy. Interesting. The other thing that we talk about in our house a lot is be authentically you. I don't care who that is, as long as it's authentically you. And I'm trying really hard with this Midlifers project to show my kids that it's okay to be authentically me. And not all of it's pretty, and some of it's embarrassing. And every bit of it is me. And so part of life is embarrassing. Part of life is joyful. Part of life is sadness. Part of life is however I feel. And during the past couple of years, I got Bell's palsy, which is a deformity of your face, usually temporary, but not always, where the muscles, it looks like you've had a stroke if you're not familiar. And the muscles in one side of your face basically relax completely. And so it's impossible to smile. In my case, my nose was being pulled really hard in one direction. Your eye doesn't work properly, and your eyeball rolls back in your face. And it's quite traumatic, not to be dramatic, because in my case, it went away, but it's quite traumatic to have a face deformity, because that's how you greet people. And my kids are like, what are you going to do? You've got all these followers and they're expecting videos. How do you show up? And it was the most challenging thing for me to do, is to show up on camera to potentially a lot of trolls who are going to say some terrible things with a deformed face. And we decided, thank goodness for my great business partner, we were like, let's just go for it. And she was so supportive. And we showed up, and not a single troll comment, kindness, outpouring of love. And I think that was a great legacy moment for my kids. Not all of life is pretty, right? But if you show up, you create community. And when you create community, you can do amazing things. So it was a great lesson for all of us.
Yeah. So I have two questions left. One is Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The second habit is living with the end in mind. And he asks you to imagine attending your funeral. What would people say about you? And then he says, if you had 10 years to plan for that, what would you do differently? And so I'll condense the question. When it's all said and done, what do you want people to say about Lisa Piantanida?
Piantanida.
Get there. I've known you forever as Lisa Libert, so anyway.
I know. You can be. I can be either one.
Okay. What would you like people to say about you?
That she brought joy and she served. Those would be two great things. I also love, she was a great mom. So there's a sidebar to the Stephen Covey piece, because he says, if you attended your funeral, I actually have in my will that everyone in attendance is requested to wear a blow-up costume. Which I know is a little off the charts, but I've attended so many funerals in my life, and the ones that I've been the most grateful for were the ones that left me with joy, and that didn't fill me with sorrow. And just like I started in the beginning telling you about Gary's funeral, I left there with joy, great sadness for losing him, but I didn't focus on that. I focused on the joy that he left in my life, and have built from that. He was a builder, and I wanted to be like him. And I've always said, can you imagine, I picture my oldest son doing a eulogy up there in like a giant cow costume. And I just think there's no way there can be tears. There will be so much laughter and so many memories and so many photos taken of this was a good life lived.
Yeah.
And we're all leaving here with great joy. And so I hope I leave everything just a little bit better than I found it.
Good answer. Great answer. So, last question is, and I ask all my guests on this podcast this question. I don't know if you've ever seen or remember the movie Leap Year with Amy Adams.
Mm-mm.
It takes place in Ireland, and she's engaged to someone, but she travels to Ireland to kind of surprise her fiance, and she meets another character, and it's a discussion of their values and why is she marrying this person and all of that kind of thing. But one of the questions is that's asked in the movie of Amy Adams: if your house was on fire and you could grab one thing, it can't be your computer, can't be your kids, no people or animals. What's a one thing in your life that you would want to grab that kind of encapsulates or that you value that tells something about your story? Give you an example. My father gave me from Second World War a medical kit. He was wounded in the Second World War, and he still has the medical kit that was used to treat him, and when he was wounded on board ship. And I keep in that black box all kinds of things. I did postgraduate work at Harvard, and I got my library card from Harvard. In that, I've got grade cards from elementary school. I got all kinds of little things that mean something to me. I would probably grab that after humans and pets and computers. What's the one thing you would grab?
I've thought about this question a lot because I've had several friends, ironically. I grew up in California in the California fires, different times that have lost their homes. And
Yeah.
then here in Colorado, we had friends a couple years ago lost their home. And I thought, what would I grab? And I walked around the house and I've looked. And truthfully, I don't have a single thing that I would grab. I think I'd find joy if any bit of it was left, because it would be like, oh, this was from before. But it goes back to what matters most for me is the investment in the humans. And so if the kids got out safe and I looked around and I thought that's just a building, it's just stuff. There's not even the most amazing photographs, all those things. Sure, I'm sure there'd be tears. But after watching some amazing, resilient friends who rebuilt, and all those things were stuff, and watching them pick out tile again and watching them put family memories back together. And we're so lucky in the digital age that we live because so much of it has become digitized. Originally, I would have said photo albums. And now I'm like, probably my phone. I guess I would grab my phone because that's got the most memories connected
Right.
to it. But if I had to watch my house burn to the ground, I think that would be the biggest thing. I'd look to the people, and those are the investment in memories is far greater than the things that go with the memories for me. So I wish I had a black box. I don't have a black box.
You may want to get one.
I know. I need a black box. Christmas.
That's right. Yeah, in fact, it's interesting. At my age, I'm trying to give things away, and two of my daughters were here from the East Coast a couple of months ago, and I said, "Take anything you want, go through the house, anything." And Jessica, my number two daughter, grabbed a piece of pottery that she made when she was in second grade that almost looks like an ashtray, but it's a piece of pottery. And she says, "I want this." And I went, "You want that?" I said, "Of all the
Here's my
stuff
legacy, all my
I
stuff.
we've traveled to 47 countries, every state in the union. I got all kinds of great stuff. And you want that?" She says, "Yeah." So it really put in context and relief what is valuable and
Right?
what people cherish. Lisa, it has been great talking with you, and I appreciate the time you've given. Everybody should look for the Midlife social media platform on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. It's great material. You'll love it, and you'll always wait for the next episode. And so we're glad that you were able to be a part of this. And we'll have another podcast with you and your partner just talking about midlife. So
I love it. Thanks for the invitation.
you're welcome. Thanks, Elisa. Appreciate it. To find out more information about this conversation and other Legacy podcast episodes, go to servantforge.org. Please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app and consider leaving us a review. The podcast was produced by Matt Erickson, music by David Hyde. Please look for a new episode on our podcast coming out soon. Remember, you have inherited a great legacy. You have an opportunity to create a great legacy. Engage your past to build your future.